Hey, Robert here with video number 7 in the Mythbuster series. In this video, I want to talk about the power of intention, which is another one of the popular buzzwords and focuses and prescriptions for how to transform your life. Now, like with all of the other Mythbuster series topics that I've chosen to focus on, there are lots of different languages that are used to describe what is meant by the power of intention. And it's actually quite similar to the core of the law of attraction, and it's also quite similar in a way to goal setting, the power of intention. It's just kind of a different spin on it. And the basic thrust of it, in the way that I became familiar with it, is that if you're going to produce particular results, if you're going to produce particular outcomes, if you're going to improve the quality of your life, however you want to language it, it starts out with you have to know what you want. You have to have an intention. You have to have a desire to produce a specific result, and it has to start with that. And it can be in kind of like a global way. You need to have a desire to make a certain amount of money, or have a certain kind of a net worth, or have a certain kind of a relationship, or overcome a particular health or physical issue, or whatever it might be. It might be kind of a more bigger picture thing, or it can be squeezed down to, what's my intention for going into this meeting today? What is my intention for going to this party tonight? What is my intention for doing this or that, which might be just a simple, 30-minute, 1-hour experience that's something that you're doing in your life. But it's that it needs to start out with, you have to have an intention for what it is that you want to create. Now, the interesting thing about this, and again, I talked about this in the Law of Attraction video, and I talked about this in the goal setting video. It presupposes that what's going on up here, what you think, what you can see, what you understand with the intellectual, rational, logical, whatever conscious mind, has power. And what I've discovered is it doesn't, number one. Now, the other thing that's really interesting about this, and it's true about so many of the self-help, personal growth, transformational prescriptions, and it's also true of the power of intention, is at the core of it, that if X is going to be created, there has to be an intention to create X. That is absolutely true. But the question is, and you've heard me say this over and over and over in the other myth-busting series, is the real question is, where is the intention that's the true creative force? Is it here in what we would call your personality, what I would call the player of the human game, your conscious mind, whatever, or subconscious mind or whatever, but who you perceive yourself to be? In this story, I'm Robert Scheinfeld. So is the power of intention in this character named Robert Scheinfeld, or is the true power of intention in the creative force that's behind the scenes in the invisible world, however you want to look at it, your real self, your true infinite being consciousness or self, which is the way I look at it, that is the true creative force behind this character and everything that the character experiences? That's the real question. Now, look at it this way. If you go into a movie theater and you get there early and the movie hasn't started, and there's no, previews or advertisements or whatever, what you would see is just a white screen. There's nothing there. The minute you start seeing something on that screen, the minute the movie starts, and the same thing is true of a play or a TV show or whatever, I'm just using movies as a metaphor, there had to have been an intention to put something there. There had to have been a creative process that created what was put there. And yes, it did have to start with an intention. In the case of a movie, the intention, the true creative process that puts something on that screen for you to watch, is Hollywood, just to call it that. Now, what I've discovered, and what has enabled me to create radical transformation in my life and to expand into states of consciousness that I'm experiencing as I'm playing this human game and living my day-to-day life, that nothing else enabled me to do, is by realizing that the true creative force that's creating everything that happened to me in the past, so-called, everything that's happening to me in the present, so-called, and everything that will happen to me in the future, so-called, is not coming from here. It's not coming from my thoughts as the character, as the personality. It's not coming from my intention. It's not coming from what my conscious mind focuses on. It's coming from behind the scenes in the true creative force, which is what I call, again, the label I actually use in my work, the Busting Loose work, is expanded self, which you could look at as the real you, in all capital letters, your true infinite being self, your true God self, whatever you want to call it. There's all kinds of labels that have been used in the literature. But what I've discovered is it's the intention of that part of you that creates what you experience, not our intention as the players of the game. I'll give you another metaphor to explain what I'm talking about here. Let's say you go to Disney World in Florida, and you decide you want to ride this ride that's called Magic Mountain. And if you don't know, Magic Mountain is one of the most popular rides at Disney World. It's a roller coaster, but it's a roller coaster that takes place in the dark. So you don't see what's going to happen with the car. It's in the dark, and you get buckled in and you go on this ride. And for most people, and some people don't like roller coasters, you may be one of them, but you'll still get the point I'm trying to make. It's not the intention of you that's determining what's happening with the ride. The ride has been built. It was the intention of someone else, so to speak, to create what happens with the ride. But you buckle yourself in and you go on that ride. And if you like that kind of stuff, and again, everybody doesn't, this is just a metaphor, you'll get it, whether you like roller coasters or not. Your purpose is to ride the ride, have the experience, which if you enjoy that kind of thing is fun, is a pleasurable experience. But the intention for it came from somewhere else, came from someone else, was determined from somebody other than you, and you simply made the decision to buckle yourself in, have that ride, and have that experience. And I could go into so much more detail on this, and I do, in the Busting Loose work, the books, the multimedia home transformational systems, the other things that are available. It's a very similar thing from what I've discovered in terms of us playing this human game. We as the players of the game, the aspect of our infinite being, so to speak, we come here and our role is to buckle ourselves in and have the experiences here. But just like we don't create Magic Mountain, we don't build the tracks and oil it and do all that stuff. We don't build the cars. We don't build the building that it's in. We just go there. We buckle ourselves in. We have the experience. Similar thing for this whole human game, this whole human experience. And our role as the players is to play and ride the rides, and ultimately, even though we don't always experience it that way, is to have ultimately the fun and realize we were always having fun, even when we didn't think we were, of riding the ride while the real us, the true creative process, the true creative self of us is the one that's determining everything. So everything that is talked about in the power of intention is true if you elevate it up to the real you, the true creative power part of you, the infinite being self, what I call the expanded self. The label doesn't matter, but it's not true if you leave it with the personality, the player, the persona, the character in the movie, however you want to look at it. Similar kind of a thing. If you're watching a movie or a television show, the characters in the movie or the television show don't have any power. If a character in a movie says, I really want to get this, I really want to have this, and I'm going to do this and this and this and this trying to get that, it's just an actor stating lines. There's no power in that. And even if in the story unfolds and the character gets what they really wanted and they said, I'm going to go after this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to get it, even if they get it, they didn't get it because that character really did anything. They got it because the script that was written from the true creative process behind the scenes created that particular story, that particular illusion, and the actor played their part, but they didn't really do it. They're just, in a sense, pretending to do it, having the experience of doing it, where it's the true creative process that has the real power. And we play our roles, but the real power, the real process, the real creativity, so to speak, the real intention, since that's the purpose of this video, is not here. It's behind the scenes. And so as I've said in concluding all of the other Mythbuster videos, what it really comes down to is, first, acknowledging that this is the truth and getting, as best as you can from an intellectual perspective, because that's all we can do in the beginning, the truth of what's really going on here, how the human game really works, who we really are as the player, as the persona, as the character, as the personality, whatever you want to call it, who we really are from the behind the scenes as this magnificent infinite being, which you may have some conscious awareness of, that's where all the power really is. And then beginning a systematic journey into, expanding back into, for lack of a better term, a merger with the true creative process, who we really are, so that we're able to tap all of our natural state of what I call infinite abundance and power and wisdom and true joy, which is way beyond happiness or peace or serenity. while still staying here and playing in this extraordinary amusement park that I call the human experience, that I call the human game. But being able to tap into this true creative process, which isn't a technique like the other things that I've talked about or like the power of intention. It's a completely different thing, and it's a journey of expansion. And I share two metaphors, which you may have already heard from me or you may not have. One is the metaphor of a straitjacket, in order to really hammer this point home. If you're in a straitjacket, your arms and your hands are pinned behind you. Now, you still can move, if you're in a straitjacket. You can turn like this. Now remember, this is a metaphor. You can rotate your head. You can turn your head backwards and forwards. You can move your legs. You can move your feet. So there is movement. There are things you can do, but you're severely limited because your hands and your arms are not available to you. And if your hands and arms were to become available to you, there would be all these things that you could now do that you can't do when you're in the straitjacket. So it's about finding a way to get out of the straitjacket and metaphorically to have use of your hands and your arms again. And I've discovered a way to do that. And again, it's not a way to make more money. It's not a way to improve your relationships. It's not a way directly or specifically to overcome a health issue or a physical issue or whatever. It's all about getting off the straitjacket, because when the straitjacket's taken off, all those other, I call them storyline details, take care of themselves. But what I've discovered is a way of taking off the human game straitjacket that we put on from birth and growing up to this point, to free you into having a direct experience of who you really are and to be able to tap in a very different way than is typically taught in the self-help systems, this true creative power that's operating behind the scenes, and start to experience different stories, different experiences day to day as you expand more and more and more into a natural experience, an experience of your natural state of infiniteness, for lack of a better term. Another metaphor that I use, which is exemplified by what you're seeing behind me, is the sun and the clouds. The sun being a symbol of your true infinite nature, what you're really capable of doing, the true creative power that is really at your disposal. Again, in a very different way than is typically pitched when the other topics we've talked about in Mythbuster as ways to transform your life. Very different way that all of this happens when you begin to play this game, what I call the Phase 2 game. But the sun being the equivalent of who you really are in your natural state as this magnificent, amazing, infinite being. And the clouds being the equivalent of what is blocking you from being able to bask in that sunlight and experience that nature of yourself. So one way of looking at what I discovered is how to take off the straitjacket. Another way to look at it is how to knock out the cloud cover layer that can block the sun from shining through, allowing the sun of who you really are, your natural state, to shine through and transform things. And that's where the power is, systematically knocking out the cloud cover, systematically getting yourself out of the straitjacket, not focusing on how can I make more money, how can I do this, how can I do that, how can I fix this, how can I change that, how can I improve that, but just focusing on removing yourself from the straitjacket that's been limiting you and restricting you, and will continue to limit and restrict you even if you make the more money, you change the relationship, you change the job, you overcome the health issue, whatever. The straitjacket's still on, even if you change those details. The cloud cover is still in place, blocking some or all of the sun of who you really are from shining through. So what I discovered the true game is all about is knocking out the cloud cover, taking off the straitjacket. And when more sun is shining in, when the straitjacket's off, all those other things that you're interested in will take care of themselves in miraculous ways. But this journey is not about producing specific results except taking off the straitjacket, knocking out the cloud cover. And so if that's something that interests you, and that's something that you resonate with, that you feel drawn to, then I invite you to learn more by exploring the resources that you'll see on the links above and also the links below this particular video. And then I've got one more video in the Mythbuster series to share with you, which you'll hear about in a few days, that'll kind of wrap all of this up, tie it all up nicely in a ribbon. It will repeat some of the same stuff that I just said, but it'll tie it all back together, close this Mythbuster series, and it'll be the last that you'll get in these series of videos for me sharing this information with you. So thanks once again for stopping by, for spending some time with me, and allowing me to share this aspect of truth with a capital T as I perceive it with you. Bye-bye for now.